Thank you both for speaking to me. Wonderful, beautiful series. I learned so much about this. What I want to know is, when we talk about the Ocean Explorer, the ship itself, this was something that was already already made before this series. And so, can you talk about the importance of bringing the ship onto this documentary? This is really about the ship's capabilities and also what we learned from it. Can you talk about kind of what started first? Was it we saw the ship and then we expanded? How did that work?
Well, let me start quickly. We had worked with Orla and the BBC team on a previous vessel we had called Aleutian. And I have to say, the new vessel was built with the help of Orla and the BBC team and many other people weighing in, including Jim Cameron, to build a vessel that would be best suited for doing exactly what we did on the show. So there was a bit of a symbiotic relationship between ourselves and the media teams and the scientists. And when it came time to build the new ship, Orla was one of the people we consulted with Jim Cameron and other media folks and producers and James Honeybourne and people we knew from our previous work on. So they were really purpose built for each other. We said, what are the things you're missing in terms of media production on the Aleutian? What can we add on this boat? And then we threw it all in there. And then we talked to the scientists and then we said, what would you like to have? And we threw all that in there. We ended up with this, I think, perfect mix of the ability to do filmmaking and the ability to do science. So it was, I have to thank everybody on both sides of the fence for helping us with the creation of the vessel. So it's just as much their creation as it is ours.
I am fascinated by the different mammals and creatures that we learn about. Can you talk about, it was explained that only like 95% of the ocean is still unexplored. So can you talk about, one, making the decision of which mammals to explore? And was there more that you wanted to do but was unable to because of say, the weather or the terrain of the ocean itself?
I'll take that one. Yes, we're going to spend the rest of our lives saying there's more to do. We could live for 1,000 years and say there's more to do because the ocean is enormous, and there is so much more to do out there, and so many more animals to meet and understand better. But we chose very carefully which animals we wanted to study, and then we teamed up with the best experts that could help us to really decode those animals, the behavior they do, behaviors that we didn't even know that they did until we got to meet them, and also the worlds that they live in. And we chose animals that could bring us to different worlds within the great realm of the ocean. So from the beautiful, warm, tropical, cozy looking shallows of the Caribbean that turn out to be not quite so cozy when you watch the show, to the really, really forbidding, dark, freezing polar deep where we meet the Greenland shark, and to all sorts of worlds in between. So we designed a series that, knowing that we had 6 trips to make, where could we go that made logical sense to, but where could we go, what animals could we meet that really turn an audience on to how incredible the ocean is and what wonders are down there, and just whet their appetite, basically.
Roger's coming in.
Yeah, it's challenging because you're trying to pick places. It was also in the middle of COVID, so we have to adjust schedules based on countries and accessibility. We cover many, many countries in the movie, which requires permits and all that business happening to happen in a difficult time. But to Orla's point, it was a tough choice. There's so much to look at, but we had to pick things that were on the route of the boat and country, things like that. But there was so much to choose from. We could make 10 more series, as Orla said, and we wouldn't run out of content in the deep ocean, because some of the stuff you're going to see in this series, I don't even know what percent I would say we didn't expect to film, and it happens, and that's the way it always is when you're.
So Roger, can you kind of talk about, there's 6 different locations. The preparation of terrain is vastly different, I would assume, from each one. So can you talk about the preparation behind that, and whether or not you was able to, or had to deviate from original plans?
We had to do a big deviation from our original plans. As you're probably aware, the production was up and running, and then we were hit by COVID. So that impacted everything and everyone. It impacted the world. So it meant we had to do a massive pivot. We were going to go to the Indian Ocean, and in the end, we went to the Atlantic, because that was actually, from a logistical point of view and a planning point of view, it was possible to work there, whereas the Indian Ocean just was throwing up too many challenges that we were unable to overcome. So then it was about working out quite quickly our new structure for the series. And yes, we traveled from sort of subtropical worlds right up into the cold North Arctic waters. And to do that, yes, you have to adapt and you have to prepare in different ways. I'm probably not the best person to speak to the detail of that preparation. I would actually hand to Orla and Vincent for that, in terms of both the ship and in terms of the personnel on board and what's required.
I mean, we any program that we're going to make about the natural world, we start with research, and that means talking to scientists, talking to experts, talking to people that live in these places that we want to go and film in, and then really honing in, and like I was saying, to find the really charismatic, interesting, different, exotic, wild creatures of the ocean that we think are going to strike an emotional connection with the audience, that they're going to engage and go, oh wow, that's cool, or it's scary, or it's beautiful, or it's just weird, whatever. And then the logistics kick in, and really making this during a global pandemic, I don't think we could have made it any harder on ourselves. It was super complicated, and it got down to the nitty-gritties of quarantining in strange places, or ridiculous amounts of time before we got on the boat. But then when we got on the boat, we were in a COVID-free world, which the rest of the world was not. The rest of the world was living with COVID, and we were safe in the knowledge that we'd implemented, with a huge help from the ship and the ship's team, managing the logistics of how do you get people on and off boat from all around the world during a pandemic and not bring COVID with them. So you could write an encyclopedia of logistical practices. Well, actually we did, because we had to then adhere to it, to ensure that we were all safe and able to execute what it is we'd hope to execute.
Yeah, and sort of functioning operating a vessel like that with all its complexities at the edge of an ice sheet is a challenge. It's an insurance nightmare on the very base level, all the way to, is the sea chest frozen? Or do you have icebergs? How far in the ice can we go? So behind the scenes, there's a whole crew of people ensuring that everybody could operate in a safe manner in a very challenging environment. You're flying helicopters over glaciers, and you're trying not to upset polar bears, and you're landing and dropping people off on glaciers. It all looks like fun and games, but any slight problem and you're in the middle of nowhere. They just don't have, the EMTs showing up on site. So we have to bring all that with us, and there's a lot of discussion. So we make it look easy, but at the end of the day, even very tropical locations are challenging, because you're operating a whole bunch of equipment in the water, and people and divers, and everybody's so focused on what they're doing that you really have to have a team behind them to make sure that everything's happening. Safety divers and pilots and mechanics and everything that are checking everything, and submarines underwater are a challenge. So yeah, it's a logistical. On top of that, COVID was, that was a nightmare, and crew were coming on the boat, waiting 2 weeks to get on the boat, doing several weeks of crewing, leaving, going back to their country, doing more quarantining to get back to their homes, and then coming right back out, getting a quarantine to come back on the boat. So it was a challenge for everybody. We spent a lot of time in hotel rooms looking at white walls, eating mediocre food, waiting to get on the boat, And we, knock on wood, had a completely clean boat for the entire. We didn't have a single infection in the height of the pandemic.
I was wondering by it being in COVID, did that change the study in terms of there wasn't people who were there? I've heard that the ocean started to heal itself, and that fish came back, and certain coral reefs came back. Were there any unexpected surprises, not related to the research, but in terms of the ocean life that you experienced?
I would say that we were getting to parts of the ocean where normally we would not have been the only boat. And because of COVID, we found ourselves to be the only boat, and therefore that I don't know that we can categorically say that changed what we saw. My impression, you know, spent a lot of my life living out there on the ocean, and I do know when you're not surrounded by an awful lot of other humans, and when it tends to be just you and some animals and not an awful lot of other disturbance, different things happen, and interactions are different. And I do feel that in that sense, COVID was our friend, because it allowed us to be the only game on. And when you've got curious whales like we did in the Dominican Republic, we had 20,000 humpback whales literally on our doorstep, and I'd say 18,000 of them almost came and checked us out because we were the interesting new shiny toy for them to, you know, they're curious and wanted to see who we were and what we were doing. So yeah, I think there is, I think there is definitely a high side that we benefited from.
So was the goal initially to present information that we already know, but in more in depth? Or was it to provide new information that we just didn't know before?
It's always the latter.
I'm going to quote the show.
Yeah.
It was to push the frontiers of what we know about our ocean. You know, James Cameron says that at the top of the show, and that was absolutely the goal. And with a ship like the Ocean Explorer that Vincent and his incredible team have put together, it is possible to do that even now in this 21st century, and we could keep doing that for forever because there is still so much more. So that was absolutely cool.
The ambition of the series was always so high, and even though we had to battle through COVID, the ambition never dropped. It was always to push the boundaries and to make new discoveries and answer questions that have been perhaps, you know, in our heads for a long time, and really kind of get to the bottom of things. So yeah, respect to the team. Even everything we went through, all the quarantine and the pivoting, that ambition never diminished. And yeah, no, super proud of what everyone achieved.
And science by nature is an exploratory process, I think. So at the heart of the show is the scientists coming and seeing a place that they've been studying for their whole lives but never had the access to it. And even watching them watch the dailies, you know, seeing how great filmmakers film things, animals that maybe they've seen their whole life, but seeing them in the eyes, through the eyes of expert filmmakers, capturing those images the way they do, you know, they all of a sudden they're re-meeting the animals that they love so much. So there's lots of emotion because it's genuine acquaintance with animals that they love but have never been so close to, have never spent so much time with, never seen them in the way they're seeing them. When you bring people who've never been in a submarine but have studied animals in the deep their whole lives, by, you know, bringing them up on hook and line or waiting for them to come to the surface half dead, going and seeing them in the natural atmosphere, you know, it's breathtaking for the people. And you see the emotion in the show of people who are witnessing these things for the first time. And almost everything you witness down there is new, because how many people have been down in a sub and looked at things? It's so remarkably small. We don't have satellites that penetrate and look in there. It's just whatever you see from those windows is all you know, everybody ever gets to see. So it's always new and it's always exciting.
For me, what's so great is wildlife filmmakers. We lean into what the scientists are doing all the time. We sort of work with them. We take their knowledge and we go out and we film things. But what was so great about this is we were teaming up with the scientists, and it felt like we were able to give back to the scientific community as filmmakers. And that felt really special. And it's just fantastic to be able to do that and just work so closely together and realize filmmaking and scientific research, you know, there is a deep connection. And I think this series goes to highlight that, which is fantastic.
Now, even though this is a high-tech ship with modern technology that we've never seen, was there still any kind of old school approaches or technology that was still used?
The ship is full of duct tape, I can tell you that. You know, duct tape and tie wraps, you know, because you have things happening, things breaking, things we want to try, things we want to test. So having an ingenious group of engineers, and I think filmmakers in general have a little bit of that MacGyver feel to them because they're out in the field with all this complicated equipment and things are breaking and they have to redesign and invent something new as you see something new. So constantly building new rigs, new ways of holding things break, things need to be new, and so having really tight interactions between scientists and filmmakers and everything brings out all this creativity. And we have such experts. The filmmakers are really professional, have done this for a long time, our crew and everybody. So there's a lot of experience in the idea. So the tech and everything is really just tools. And then people are reassembling them in ways that are, special. And sometimes they have all this expensive camera equipment and someone's filming, and then one of the best shots is somebody on the side with a camera, a phone camera, but you put them in the right place at the right time and they're good at what they're doing and you get that moment. So there's a lot of that because nature doesn't tell you what's going to happen until it happens. And so everybody has to be on their best, alertness for what's going on,
Yeah, I think to Vincent's point, we have to constantly adapt to what's going on in front of us. We always go out with scripts, but nature kind of, the wildlife rips that up and throws it out the window. So we have to think on our feet and be adaptable. And I love it when you see Eric with his soldering iron out, sort of taking things apart and rebuilding them to try and help us capture whatever it is we're trying to capture in the field. And that MacGyver approach, to me, it reminds me of a program called the A-Team, when they used to go in the garage and then reappear with this incredible vehicle that they built out of, I don't know, bits of things that are lying around in people's garages. And it's that sort of approach that I love, that it still kind of gets back to that kind of grassroots approach sometimes, even though we're working with the most incredible technology on this most advanced vessel that has ever hit the oceans in terms of scientific research. So the endeavor and the drive and the determination of the team is what kind of is behind all of it, and that in terms of the invention of kit and technologies and adapting as we go.
Thank you, everyone, for speaking to me. Fantastic series.
Thanks,
it's a
Jane.
pleasure, and thank you.